Hello, everyone. Welcome to Esalen Live. I'm Christine Chen. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to explore the science and health benefits of being in awe. I'm super excited. One of our top thought leaders in the Bay Area is going to be with us in just a second. Her name is Virginia Sturm. She's with UCSF Memory and Aging Center. She's the Associate Professor of Neurology and Psychiatry there and the Director of the Clinical Affective Neuroscience Lab. Recently published a study with her team on the effects of awe on health and aging. And so I want to bring her in right now and have a chat about this. I'm in awe of you, Virginia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. What did you study exactly? I mean, awe is such a small word, but means so much. What exactly did you study and who did it intend to benefit?
Yeah, we studied healthy older adults in our work, but I'll just say that I think the findings aren't specific to older adults. That's just who we first focused on because I work in the Memory and Aging Center at UCSF. But our goal was to see if we could design a very simple behavioral intervention that increased positive emotions, because positive emotions have benefits for health, for physical health, and for mental health. And so we focused on the emotion of awe, which is a positive emotion that we experience in relation to vastness. When we experience, when we're in a new place or we experience something we hadn't seen before or understood was possible, we often experience awe, and it happens outside in nature, in response to art, um, during religious experiences, collective movements such as protests and marches, things like that.
What do you mean by vastness?
Yeah, vastness can refer to physical vastness, such as you go to the Grand Canyon and you literally see how big it is, but it also can be achievements in terms of like, something that you didn't think was possible for any human to accomplish. It could be something spiritual, something larger than ourselves. And that's the thing about awe is it shifts our focus out onto the world around us and helps us feel connected to this larger world, and also kind of a smaller. So we talk about the small self
Hmm.
that awe fosters, and that's what we mean by that.
I want to backtrack a little bit because the opposite of this is that negative emotions lead to bad health, which is a finding that you have discovered in the study and previously, right? Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, negative. So all emotions we think are important in life. So the science of affective scientists think that it's good to have a mix of emotions. So negative emotions aren't all bad. They help us to survive, and that's why they evolved, and that's why we have negative emotions. But generally, they should be brief, and we should have a negative emotion such as fear or anger or sadness, and then we should go back to our normal baseline state and return to neutral. But if you have a negative emotions that's sustained and chronic, like chronic anxiety or stress or fear about the world or whatever is going on, then that's when negative emotions can have detrimental effects on the body as well as the mind. And things like loneliness is one thing we think a lot about now. That's a chronic kind of negative state that often older adults after the age of 75 are at risk for. So positive emotions can help to undo those effects of negative emotions. And what we mean by that is that when we feel certain positive emotions, physiologically, they can help us to feel calmer. They can slow our heart rate and help us to breathe more deeply, and
Mhm.
help us to restore back to our our normal baseline and find a sense of calm.
And this is what you found. This is like the main thing, which is that awe increases that positive emotion that we want to invite more in. And especially right now. You did the study a while ago, but it came out at just the right time, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we think in this study we asked people to go on walks, and we asked them to try to half of the study to try to experience awe. And to do that, we instructed participants to just try to go somewhere new if they could, and to look at the details of the world around them with fresh eyes. So novelty helps us to feel awe, although you can see and experience awe even in familiar places if you find new things to think about or you appreciate them in a new way. Um, But that's what we were going for, and we did find increases in awe. But we told participants to try to do that, So I think for me the most exciting part was that not just awe increased in the people who took awe walks, but other pro-social, what we call pro-social positive emotions
Mm.
increased.
Let's run down some of the findings because I think you mentioned a few of them already, but that when you go on this quote unquote awe walk, that it helps boost your attention to others. Why is this so important right now?
Yeah, well, I think, we're all struggling, as we are all, many of us are stuck at home and feeling isolated and disconnected from our normal lives. And awe, because it helps us to feel less self-important in that we can ruminate and we can all get stuck in kind of negative thought cycles, and awe kind of shifts our attention outward and helps us to feel connected to this larger world, and by default it helps us to think about and prioritize other people more than we were beforehand, when we kind of might be getting stuck in our own minds. So
Mm.
that's why right now, I think in particular, is a nice emotion to try to foster, because it doesn't just feel good, as positive emotions do, but it helps us with that social connection, which I think is really at risk for many of us right now.
And that's related to the small self, which is, when you realize how vast the world is, that you're really a little part of this. Is that kind of the connection there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we realize, like, oh, maybe all these things I'm really worried about are, maybe I can see them in a little bit more of a perspective. It's not to say those things aren't really important and important things in each of our lives, but at the same time, there is this larger world around us, and sometimes, um, it's good to kind of get a foothold on where we stand and have some perspective. So that's what we mean by the small self. So some people wonder if it's like a bad thing to have a small self, and it's not supposed to mean something negative. It's supposed to mean small in relation to this larger world of which you are a part, and yet more connected.
Yeah, a little bit more, less that you're diminished, but more that there's a humility. Is that
Yeah,
more of it? Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I
And when
found
people,
this. Go ahead,
sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
I
Go
was just going to
ahead.
say, when people feel awe, they do act, and they report feeling more humble and more kind. So yeah, like you said.
One of the things that I loved about your study was the finding that this increases smile intensity. Can you describe what that means?
Yeah, so when we study emotions, we can study them in a variety of ways. We can measure them in a variety of ways. In this study, we asked people a lot of questions about how they felt. We asked them questions every day for 8 weeks about their day-to-day emotions. We asked them about how they felt during their walks. And during their walks, we also asked them to send us selfies. And so with photographs or videos, another way to measure emotions is with behavioral measures. So we can quantify how intensely people express emotions on their face. And so what we did here was we coded all of the photographs, thousands of photographs that we got for the smile intensity. And so there are systems where you can quantify how much, my lip corners are pulling up into a really strong smile, a kind of medium smile, or a slight smile. And we had people rate the photographs, and coders who were trained in the system tell us how strong the smiles were. And over time, the people who took the awe walks had this kind of increasing smile intensity, bigger smiles over time than the people who took the control walks.
So interesting. We're getting some commentary on Facebook Live. Daniel says, walking around Esalen, I felt a lot of awe. We definitely feel that way when we walk around Esalen. And yes, Liz, this will be recorded so you can watch it a little bit later. How do we make awe walks more part of our lives? Because this is some pretty incredible stuff when you talk about pro-social emotions of kindness and compassion that arise out of taking a walk where you feel a sense of awe. Like that's incredible. Just a small thing can make such a big impact. How do we do more of this?
Yeah, I think it's a state of mind, to be honest, because I think you can remind yourself to attend to the world all the time. A colleague of mine, after I told her about this study, she told me, like, oh, I'm writing you this email, but I'm watching the leaves dancing on the tree branch in front of me outside my window, right? And her point was, like, she's still sitting at her computer writing emails, but she's appreciating just in that moment, like, oh, look at the leaves in this way that I hadn't appreciated before. So I think about it with technology. I think about it like, how are we talking here, and how are people finding this study around the world? I mean, even simple things like that do elicit feelings of awe. So I don't think it has to be anything really special or large that we all do. It's just, it does take a little practice and some reminders at the beginning. And I think it does get easier to just stop
How
and appreciate
relate
those details.
When you said stop and appreciate those details, is awe kind of a relative of gratitude? I mean, we talk a lot about a gratitude journal, practice gratitude. It seems like they're very similar. Are they exactly the same or just a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, we think of positive emotions as a family of different emotions. And so gratitude and awe, compassion, joy, calm, those are all different kinds of positive emotions that have a commonality in that they feel good, they're pleasant. They also have certain, often they are associated with a smile on the face and certain physiological changes. But we also think that they're different in that each one serves a slightly different function in our lives. So when we feel gratitude, we might be motivated to express that to someone and express to someone how meaningful they are to us. Whereas awe is a little bit different, right? We feel again more connected socially. We did see in this study that the people who took the awe walks on a day-to-day basis, they did express more emotions such as gratitude and admiration and compassion. So there was this kind of spillover effect where taking the awe walks just once a week helped people to feel on a day-to-day basis that they were having more gratitude and compassion. So like you said, they are linked, but not exactly the same, I would say.
I do have a question from Amit that says a sense of something that's greater than ourselves is awe, which you've defined before, but he relates it also to the ego dissolving, which can cause some existential fear, is his part of his question. He asks, how would you reconcile this with an awe walk? Not sure if you can answer, but if you can answer honestly,
Yeah.
that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I guess part of it to me is, well, I think the brain, we always toggle between an internal ego centered kind of focus and an external focus. And I think a balance between those kinds of systems is important for all of us to maintain and also for well-being and mental health. And that, too much focus on others and not on self is not probably adaptive either. And so I think becoming okay with the fact that we are an important person with needs and goals, and at the same time prioritizing others, finding some kind of balance between those two worlds. And it might be anxiety producing for some people who are used to focusing more on one or the other. But I guess that's how I would kind of think about it, is like we all need to shift between self and other focus and find ways to integrate that into our day-to-day lives and not find it scary.
Oh, thank you for answering that question. I put up on the screen here one of the quotes from the participants of this study. Would you mind reading this and sort of interpreting it against the backdrop of the study?
Sure, yeah. And we got a lot of lovely comments through the emails that people sent us. So this was just one example. But this person wrote, the beautiful fall colors and the absence of them amidst the evergreen forest, thought about how the leaves were no longer crunchy underfoot because of the rain, and how the walk was more spongy now, thought about the wonder that a small child feels as they explore their expanding world. So, I mean, I would give this participant, an A+ in their attention to the AWAC details because they really took them to heart. I would note like the sensory details that they included, the sponginess, really stands out. We all can imagine what that's like. They noticed the colors, the air, the weather. It was very much nature focused and outside of the self, and that was really the goal.
I really like that you drilled in on the level of detail because it feels like that's sort of the tipping point of all of this is detail.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. And I think, we all can take a walk outside. That's not a hard thing. And walking is a good thing. That was why, having the control group just take walks was a tough control because walking benefits all of us as well. But I think it's just taking a walk with a slightly different intention, which is to notice details and to try to yeah, tap into that sense of wonder, even for things that might be in your front yard that you never saw before or never took the time to appreciate. And I think honestly, in this time of COVID, there is an opportunity to foster that because time has changed in a weird sense and slowed down in weird ways.
Very true, very true. And revealed quite a bit as well. I feel like just taking a walk is like with my dog or my husband, it saves me sometimes from all of the things that are going on. Question, since you are so deep in the studies of memory and aging. My dad, for example, has Parkinson's and as like a little, he can walk still, but it is a struggle a little bit. But sometimes I find that he sort of stays in the place of like what he can't do
Mhm.
versus what he can. Can this type of practice, if one has a neurodegenerative disease, be helpful in either supporting it or maybe even making some of the symptoms better?
That's a great question, and that's definitely a future direction that we want to head into is to test whether all walks can benefit different groups of clinical groups, different patients. We started with healthy adults just to see if we could find it there, but I actually think that in people who have more struggles with anxiety or depression or even physical limitations, might have more room to benefit, to be honest, if you can modify or find a way to use this approach that's appropriate for the person. But yeah, I do think it might take some modification, but it might not. Again, I think you can walk outside very a short distance and try to explore parts of the world nearby that are different. And I do think it has spillover effects in terms of just making us feel calmer and a little more happy and a little focus our attention not so much on our problems, but on the strengths, as you're saying, that are still intact.
This might be kind of a leap, but can it reverse aging?
I don't know about I don't know about that. I don't want to, oversell it, but I do think, it can do no harm. I think that's how I kind of think about it. Like if we all did little things like this, a bunch of little things like this more often, I think we would all benefit. And having healthy, happy lives over decades and years, I think that is one secret to longevity and healthy aging.
Well, let us go back to how we do this because this is such great information, but then to put it into practice, a practice each day. You mentioned go somewhere new, and I want to just move on to talk about the differences in like our environments are so different, right? So when we think about Oz, like I think mountain, ocean, the big thing, the vast things. Can you talk about the difference in maybe the impact of awe in those settings and why they're important?
Yeah, I think well, I think you can experience awe, in many places, but nature does seem to be a really, really powerful, relatively easy place to find it. I mean, there's a normal distribution kind of how easily any of us can feel awe or not. And for some people, it's harder than others. So if you're the kind of person who you don't feel awe a lot, it might take something more impressive, like a bigger mountain or a sunset plus a mountain or, a more potent awe experience than it might for someone who experiences awe more easily. But I don't know if we know, the differences in any of those kinds of what those stimuli would do. I think if they help you to feel like that feeling of wow, like, that real expression of awe, then any of them will do. I just think it's probably the magnitude of what you need, to feel awe or what you're used to. It's like if you live in the mountains, maybe the mountains do lose some of their luster. I don't know if that's true. I would guess that maybe that's not true, to be honest. But
I guess we could just go to the mountain that we always go to and notice something new. Maybe that's the sense of awe in the practice. There's also the idea of those who live in cities that there are a lot of different types of awe-inspiring things there too. Can you speak to those?
yeah, I think, same kind of thing. If you can feel awe and think about how a skyscraper was designed and how it was built, or how the Golden here in the Bay Area, how the Golden Gate Bridge was built by people so long ago with like much less developed technology, or if you just appreciate the light, the sun on a building in a way that you hadn't. I think there's many ways to find awe in urban environments, and I will say that we deliberately didn't tell people whether to go in a city or in a rural, nature kind of place, because we wanted them to go anywhere and we wanted them to
Mm.
try to feel awe in any place, because I do think it's possible. And so they did. And both of our groups took walks in very similar kinds of places. So it wasn't like one went to the Grand Canyon and one went to like a dim alley, with nothing interesting in it. Um,
What brings you awe, a sense of awe? It's a tough thing right now, but it sounds like you're right in the heart of knowing that this is a benefit. So, how do you take your awe walks, or what brings you awe?
I mean, I think I feel really a lot. And I think, being in science, to me, discovering things, I always feel awe. I'm always astounded that any of our studies work and hypotheses can be right. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong, and it's such a long and hard process. And I think people who are in research do feel awe from that process. You have to, or else it's too much. It's too much pain and not enough positive experience. But I mean, I think really simple things like taking walks, seeing the sunset, the moon, seeing my kids grow up. I don't think it doesn't. It's nothing special for me. It's the typical stuff as for everyone else.
Well, this is such a great thing to learn, especially now. And I appreciate you coming on Esalen Live to share this information and just inspire us to take a walk and maybe see things a little bit differently. And that's how we begin. Virginia Sturm, UCSF Associate Professor of Neurology and Psychiatry, excuse me, studying the effects of awe on health and aging. Would you be willing to share the link if it's available to the actual study, and then we can share it with our family?
Sure.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I'm also we put all of the instructions exactly as we gave them participants in the paper, so I'm happy to share that as well. They're very simple.
Okay, so we could do our own studies at home and be in
Exactly.
awe.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. Have a great day. Thank
Thanks
you
so
so
much.
much.
Bye.
Bye.